Why, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you guys are dialing in from today. My name is Tyler, and I'm going to be walking us through today's webinar. Today, we're going to cover data connectors, something we haven't done in a little bit. We'll talk through what a data connector is in Julius, how to use it. We'll talk through our Google Ads, Google Drive, OneDrive, and SharePoint connectors that we have. And we'll also talk through what I just mentioned, the Google Ads and Meta Ads connectors. And then finally, if you have your data in a data warehouse like BigQuery, Databricks, Postgres, Snowflake, etc., we'll walk through how to set that up and what it looks like when you're actually querying this in Julius today. We do these webinars twice a week. We alternate between an onboarding webinar and then also either a notebooks webinar that we did last week or this data connector one that we do every other week too. That being said, let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm going to do a quick audio check, make sure everything's looking correct, and then we'll go ahead and get started today. If this is your first webinar you've attended, welcome. We do these webinars, and then you can also check out our Luma for upcoming webinars, and then also our YouTube for any of the previous webinars as well. You can see all the previous recordings from the onboardings to the other iterations of this that we do typically. And today we're going to go through actually setting these connectors up with you live, answer any questions that you have, and then point you to some resources in case you have any other additional questions about how they work, how to set them up, etc. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let me change over my screen here. I'm going to go to, make sure I have the right one, the Julius demo screen here. Actually, we'll switch over to this one right here. Awesome. So this is the data connectors page, right? If you're on the Julius homepage, for example, if you're in a new chat over here, you could actually see the data connectors that we have in two different locations. You can go either to connect your data, or you could also go to data connectors here in the left panel. This has all the different connectors that you've set up already, other integrations that we have, including Slack, which is something that we're working on right now. And then also all the different connectors that we have in our library that I mentioned before. We also have a button down here in case you see one or you are looking for a connector that we just don't have in our list. You could also use this to request one there. And we'll talk through this as well later. Then finally, some whitelisted IPs. This is helpful for setting up certain connectors that we'll talk about. Sometimes in order to access your servers, you need to whitelist the IP address from which you are trying to connect to it through Julius. And that's something we'll talk through in a bit. The most common connector and the easiest connector to connect to is our Google Drive one. Google Drive and also OneDrive are some of the most popular ones, and reasonably so. We have universities, students, and then also large enterprises and folks that are just having all of their files inside of a Google Drive. You can click on this, similar to any other sort of application that you used in the past, and you could log into your Google account and then authorize access there. You can also give Julius ability to write and create in Drive, which is also fairly helpful, and I'll show you why. And then we'll go ahead and click this to give access. Once you do that, from the typical UI of either the Threads or Notebook, you could just select Google Drive. And then now you could access all of the different files within your Google Drive that you want to do. So here I'm going to try maybe some of these sales transaction CSVs that we have. You could hold down Shift, and you can select as many files as you want and any sort of file type as well there. So I'm going to try this one out with these 3 files. Very similar process to uploading a file, whether you're uploading CSVs or Excel files or TXT files. It'll simply add them in here, and now you can start chatting with them too. So let's load and preview the data. Again, Julius will write the prompt in order to write the code in order to fulfill that prompt. And then we'll see what it looks like here. The process is exactly the same for OneDrive as well, and also for SharePoint if you are using Microsoft Teams or work at an enterprise that uses SharePoint. You can simply click those, authorize your account, same way as Google Drive. You can select all the different files and then add them to Julius too. So here we see that we were able to load and preview the data there. One really cool thing that you could also do once you do connect your Google Drives is to export these tables to Sheets, right? Whether it's tables that you create in Julius or that Julius creates for you, you can click this button and it's going to export it into a Google Sheet for you to view. I find this very, very helpful. Oftentimes when I'm working with Julius, I want to fact check the information, make sure everything looks correct. And the old workflow used to be to export and then re-upload into either Sheets or into Excel for me to explore or manipulate the data myself. So here we have the data that's accessible that we just had inside of Julius. And the other really cool thing is you could also work this in a loop, right? I could update the data here if I wanted to. I could add in formulas, filter, make pivot tables, and I could go back into Julius, use the Google Drive or OneDrive connector and bring it back inside of Julius as well too. So it does kind of work like a cycle. You can see the file created right here. The other cool thing that you could do is you could open up the side panel and you could view all of the different tables here as well as you're working too. So in case you don't want to go to Google Sheets or export to Sheets, you could just see the data yourself there. And that's it. That's the easiest way for you to get started using Google Drive. Again, big reason why we built these connectors is to help reduce the friction from needing to go to a tool, export, re-upload into Julius, and then do all that same in reverse, right? This sort of helps one-stop shop for everything you need to get your data inside of Julius, start working on, and then getting it out of Julius too. The next connector we'll talk about while we're here is our Postgres connector, right? If you open up the side panel again and we go to data connectors, you'll have all these different databases down here, right? We support things like BigQuery. We support Databricks, which is one that we've released recently. We support MySQL, Postgres, etc., and even Snowflake too. For all of these, there's, depending on which tool and which data warehouse your data is stored in, will change the way that you need to access it in the different credentials, either username, password, or maybe there's some other way that you need to authorize your account through Julius to access the data on your data warehouse, right? If you're not familiar, we do have some documentation here that should help with setting these up. That looks like that link is broken. If you go to the upper left and you click on documentation, data connectors, has everything you need to know about setting these up. Or you could forward this to someone on either your IT team or security team if they are curious and are able to set that up for you as well. They could refer to this guide to get started. So for example, the one we'll talk about right now and walk through is our PostgreSQL database. This is just a place where we store all of like user information from app usage to everything related to what most folks use in their data warehouse, right? Same thing for anyone that's building an app, any folks that are doing research and they have their data stored in some sort of data warehouse like Postgres. You can check it out here. So here's all the information that we need from the connection name, username, password. All of this is set in our own data warehouse. And then we could use this to connect to Julius over here. Cool. So you just enter in all of your information here. And then you could add the connection. And that's what I have saved right here. The really cool thing about the Postgres connectors and all the data warehouse connectors is it makes it really easy to just pull fresh data, right? Historically, what you would have had to do is write a query or grab the data from the data warehouse, download it as either a CSV file or a text file or JSON file, upload it back into Julius, and then do that every single time you wanted to analyze the data. Not necessarily the best when you want to analyze fresh data. So using the connector just taps into that fresh data well, if you will. So here we see the Postgres connector. And if I open up the right-hand side panel, you could actually see the connector here too. What we have here is all of the different tables that we have in this Postgres connector. So things like my catalog sales, for example, or data related to customers. Likewise for things like stores, store returns, etc. You can click on any one of these to expand them and you can get a preview of the different columns that you have. And you could even search in the upper right-hand side if you're not sure. Maybe if I wanted to see customer, all the tables that have customer columns, you could type in here and then it'll filter out all of those tables and columns too. So how does this work actually, right? Let's imagine I wrote a query here or just a question. I want to see maybe show me sales by store over time. Historically, what Julius would have done is just write a Python code to analyze the file. We'll do one step before this actually now, which is to write a query in Postgres to grab that data itself. So here Julius is thinking through how to do it. And then it's going to write out first this SQL query here. It's going to pull the data into Julius. And then now we're going to write the Python code to analyze it or visualize it. While this is running, oh, here we see it going. And then, so that was the end of the first query. Julius is taking a look, and this is something we'll talk about in a little bit about learned information, which is a cool feature that the team has built. And then we're going to run the query here. All right, let's see if this runs before I explain the learned information. So yeah, we'll just dive into learned information. So while this is running, one common question we get is like, hey, how does Julius know which columns to use or which tables to use, right? If you yourself were writing this query, you would have to have some sort of understanding of these tables, how they join or connect to each other, where the data lives, and sort of like if there's any unintuitive column names, you would have to know like, hey, this is the column that we typically use to do X, Y, or Z, right? With Julius, as you continue to use these connectors, and what we see Julius doing right now, it's querying the database, it's looking at the sort of data that's within those different columns, and then it'll say like, hey, this column is typically used for stores, or this table is typically where we store customer information, right? We create a little thing called learned information here, which I'll click on. And what you can see is all of the different learnings from Julius about your data in the data warehouse and the different formatting and schemas too. This helps for a variety of reasons, right? First, it helps reduce that load of folks like myself who don't know every single table that exists in my database and every single column. And then separately for folks that just don't really know that information at all. We've seen several use cases where infrastructure teams or the data teams will set up the initial connectors, and then folks on the marketing team and operations team will be able to just write a simple question, and then Julius will be able to answer it using all the different information that it's learned from those connections, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go back over here to our connectors, and the way that you could see this is if you look at the reasoning here. So if I expand one of these tables, you can see Julius trying to figure out what it should do. And then you can see here, hey, this is where we store item level attributes, for example, or this table is where we store store level attributes. All of this is learned information that Julius has either gathered from previous conversations or from the different columns and tables that we've edited ourselves too. It typically takes a little bit longer when it's your fresh connection, which we see here. But as you continue to use it, Julius will know which tables to go to and which columns to refer to as well. Let me expand this window here so we can see this in action. Okay, so we see this one here. It says the key fact table stores all these ones, and you can see, hey, here, finally we've gotten to the most relevant columns for all these joins and analysis. Now it's going to go through and try to either connect it, we'll have to see what it does, connect it, or write the Python code. Common question that we get from other folks while this is running is, hey, what's the most amount of tables Julius can query, or is there any limitations on data size, right? We actually have enterprise customers that are using Julius to analyze multi-million rows of data. Here in this data set, we have, I think, up to 10,000 rows, I think I said. And some of the columns here are really in-depth too. It has a couple million rows of data. That's sort of the reason why we do the Postgres querying first. It gives us a way to segment the data before pulling it all into Julius. It gives it a little bit more manageable to use. Another common question we get from folks is, how does Julius actually process it, right? Since Julius is running the Python query, or sorry, the Postgres query in Postgres, it uses whatever infrastructure you have on that side, at least for the Postgres connector. And then all of the Python code is using the Julius resources here in the upper left. That's in order to visualize or run any other sort of manipulations on the data once it's inside of Julius. Looks like Julius might be running into an issue here. Let's see. This doesn't typically take this long, but we'll see if it's able to get through it. It might be because, this data set is a synthetic one where I'm not actually showing any user data. So maybe there's something wrong with the dates in there. If I said most recent, it might be trying to look for like the last 6 months or something. But let's take a look. Maybe in parallel, let's try to run a separate one. I'm going to open up the tab. Let's see here. If I were to go to a new thread, I'm just going to connect my Postgres again. We'll see what's going on here. There it goes. So this isn't typically normal. This is something I'll flag to the team. It looks like Julius got kind of stuck for a second, but it did figure itself out. That's something I'll flag to them. But then I noticed I got unstuck because we could see it's actually writing the Python code now, which is, hey, we have the data. Let's actually visualize it here. And that's sort of what I thought. I think it is because the data is synthetic. I think there's only one time frame, at least for this data set, that it was able to pull. But here, let's try a different query here. Let's try a different one. Let's just say, show me customer demographics using the customer table. And we'll see if this one works. Okay, so it's going to grab the customer information from the customer demographics table here. I think I might have confused it a little bit, but we'll see how it goes. There we go. So it's able to pull it that way too. So one thing that we typically do, we use this internally, is to just analyze our own Postgres data. So instead of using a different tool like DataGrip or pgadmin, we could just grab the stuff there too. So that's the Postgres connector. It works very similar to the other data warehouses. You simply connect. Julius will write a query in whichever warehouse language it uses, and then we'll pull that data into Julius for Julius to use typically. Let's keep on going. So that brings us to our Google Ads and Meta Ads connector too. I'm going to switch over my tab here, and we'll go over to this window. Close out this one here. And this has the Google Ads connector that I have, or that at least I can set up. All you have to do is click on it. And then now we'll just select the Google Ads account that we want to connect to. One thing you'll notice here is I have two different ones. This depends on how many advertiser accounts you have that are associated with your Google account. The other thing to note is if you are an agency, right, a marketing agency, or you manage ad accounts for multiple companies, what you'll see here is a drop-down menu that you could expand, and then you could select which ads accounts you want to connect to. This way you keep all of the data for each one of those customers or clients separate. And in this case, I only have one, but you could use those separately within Julius itself. So if I click over here, we'll see that I just have my Google Ads connector set up. All I'm going to do now is click on chat. And it's going to be a very similar UI to what we just saw with the Postgres connector, which I'll open up the side panel here. We're going to wait for this to load. And then here you can see the Julius demo account. And I'm going to expand it, and you can see all of the different data sets that we have available within our Google Ads, right? So from customers, campaigns, different types of ad groups, and also assets too, and asset performance. Let me expand some of those to give you guys a look. So the really cool thing that you could do is evaluate things like your ad spend. So let's have Julius take a look at our ad spend and see if there's any improvements we can make. Similar to using the Postgres connector, Julius is going to write Google Ads SQL, so GSQL I think is what it's called, and it's going to pull that information into Julius for us to analyze. Really, we do this every week for our own internal usage. We, like a lot of other companies, use Google Ads. So we actually use Julius to analyze our return on ad spend, our campaign performance, and also even things like keywords, which I'll talk about in a bit too. The other thing you could also see, and you could see Julius pulling here, is the conversion rate. So all of the stuff that we have related to purchases through Google Ads, and also anything like clicks, anything like like actual purchases and conversions. And it can be for any of the sort of Google assets that we have, whether it's PMAX or the other campaigns that we're running. You could analyze too. So we'll see here. So Julius is explaining what it's doing, and now it's looking at those tables, and then it's going to print out the results here. A couple things I might have skipped over. I did give Julius write access as well. You don't have to do this, but Julius, when you give it write access, gives it a couple cool things that we've tried out internally. It gives it the ability, if you tell Julius to, hey, I want to update some of my campaigns, or I want to adjust the keywords or turn certain campaigns off, you can do it all within Julius as well. You could do it manually, which means doing some similar analysis that we're doing here and deciding, hey, I want to kill this campaign and let's actually spin up a new one. You could do that all within Julius. The other cool thing is if you use a notebook, right? Notebooks, in case you have attended some of our previous webinars, give you the ability to run a notebook over and over again, which means running an analysis over and over again. You could schedule those analysis, and then you could use it, which I'll talk about, to maintain your campaigns for you, which is pretty interesting and one of the experiments that we're currently running. Typically it doesn't take this long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just open up the side here. I'm going to go to a new thread. And I'm actually going to change the model over. I think it could just be a GPT-5 issue. So pardon the break there. We'll see if this is able to run. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh. Is my internet? Let's see what's going on here. Could just be my internet here. Let me give this one more refresh. I'm just not sure if something's wrong with my connection. See, that was able to connect that time. That was weird. We'll see if this is able to run, but let me try it one more time over here using non-GPT-5. So what I'll do is I'll change over to O3, which I've had a little bit more success with. Let's try it again. Let's say, let's visualize my campaign spend. This one looks like it's still going. Okay, so it's asking for some clarification. Let's review my ad spend for the last 2 weeks. Okay, let's see here. Still running. me take one more look. Apologies about this. I wonder if it could just be a connection issue right now. Let's take a look. Okay, this looks like it's working. I'm just not sure why it took that long to do it. But here we see Julius actually reviewing the Google Ads connector. And then writing the query there too. The other cool thing, and then I'll just fill in some time here while this is running, is the keywords too. It's a common thing that we have to do ourselves, like a lot of other marketing teams, is we need to optimize our campaigns based off the keywords we want to bid on, right? Typically it takes a lot of work just seeing which keywords have volume, right? The cool thing that Julius has access to that a lot of folks don't know is it has access to the Google Keywords Planner, right? So that means you could ask for it to do some research, look for the volume and which keywords are probably the best ones for you to be bidding on based off of your use case, and then use that to help optimize your campaigns there too. So that's something that we do internally. The experiment I mentioned earlier is we're running a notebook every single day that has our own Google Ads connected to it. And then we can see, hey, let's see, there's new keywords and with potentially good volume that we could at least make some campaigns on or bid on, and then using that to either turn off old campaigns or spin up new ones automatically using Julius. It just seems today seems to be like one of those days where Julius is taking quite a long time to just connect or do exactly what I wanted to do. But we'll follow up on that afterwards too. Going to flag this to the team. It's not typically this long. Potentially wondering if it's just my connection that's having an issue. Finally, the last thing, sorry, apologies for that, for not being able to show the results, is the ability to use the Meta Ads connector, which is something that we just spun up recently, right? Very similar. You can use this to connect to your Meta Ads account. And also very similar to Google Ads, you could use it to maintain or update any of the campaigns that you have running there. We haven't officially launched it just yet, still fairly new, but something that we've spun up last week due to a lot of demand that's coming in. Cool. While this is running, any questions from folks? It's been a little bit of me talking through this and waiting for Julius to load, but if there's any questions I can answer or any resources I can point folks to, more than happy to do so right now. If you're just joining us, the other things that you can do, again, you can check out our documentation here to view anything related to our data connectors. Separately, if you do have any actual questions, like, hey, maybe there's a data connector that we just don't support, or you're curious how to get things to work correctly, one thing you could do is just reach out to us using this help button in the upper right-hand corner and click on the help icon. You can create a ticket this way. Alternatively, you can reach out to us at team@julius.ai and we'll get back to you as well. And then finally, if you do have any security related questions, I know that's always top of mind, you can go to our security page, which is trust.julius.ai, and you could review all of the different policies that we have, including our status on our current and also our upcoming compliance too, which we're working on GDPR currently. You can also request access to our SOC 2 Type 2 most recent audit report. And then also, if you have any other questions or someone on your team has other questions, you could forward them to security@julius.ai to answer there as well. With that being said, I'm going to actually do a quick pause here. I'm going to flag this to the team. This is really abnormal for Julius to be working like this. I'm going to see if there's some certain issue. It looks like it just took a really long time in that first window that we ran. But you can see the campaigns that Julius is running and in this demo one. And then you can see the daily ad spend over time too. Apologies for that again. It doesn't typically take this long to do. But in this case, you could see all of the different recommended actions and the different campaigns that we're running. And then also some of the issues with our conversions in this demo account there. Awesome. Do one last pause. Any other questions? I'm going to stop this part here. Cool. If not, thank you guys so much for joining. Again, we have all of the upcoming webinars on our Luma. And then we also have our previous webinars available on our YouTube as well for you to view. Thank you so much for joining. Again, apologies that it took so long for us to generate some of these results. Totally abnormal. I'm going to be hopping on with the team to figure out what's going on there too. But hopefully we'll see you in the next webinar, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.